Parents, do me a favor. Stop what you're doing and pay attention. Very seriously, this is really important. So I want every parent, I want all parents undivided attention. I'm very serious. This is really important. We're catching up on a lot of school threats, and I gotta say, after 6 years of doing this show, I have never been more disgusted. The main reason why all these threats in these schools happen is because it's the kids who say, well, I don't want to go to school today. I'd rather be at home. And so they go on social media, post a threat, and all of a sudden, bam. Let's take a look at what happened in Oklahoma when school swatting happened all across Oklahoma. And it's definitely going on. It needs to stop. Watch.
Avoid being kept in the dark about recent school threats.
And Baltimore County Police are placing more officers at...
Take a look.
Agencies, including local police, Oklahoma Highway Patrol.
School districts across the state were on high alert today after false 911 calls about active shooter threats were made at more than half a dozen schools.
Several law enforcement agencies, including local police, Oklahoma Highway Patrol, and the FBI have been investigating. Ashley Moss brings us the story.
I spoke with an expert who said swatting calls like the ones targeting Oklahoma schools earlier today are particularly problematic, even if they're just a hoax.
Up until September, the idea of someone calling in a hoax threat of an active shooter at a school was pretty unusual.
But there were 911 calls all across the Sooner State earlier today, including Tulsa, Stillwater, Bartlesville, Perry, Miami, Enid, Medford, Durant, and Ardmore. Authorities bringing into action for what they believed at the time were credible school active shooter threats. But the calls were a hoax. No shootings occurred, and no staff or students were in danger.
To us, it's not a prank. This was serious, and actually, it's criminal.
The executive director of the National Association for School Resource Officers says while it's one thing to make a threat against a school like we see sometimes on social media, this is different. Hoaxes are not harmless.
That raises the element of danger to everyone. It doesn't have to be real for the trauma to be there. It just has to be believed that it's real.
And you task resources away from somebody that really needs help, that, in my opinion, that's criminal.
Authorities are looking for a suspect, and earlier this evening, investigators found that the so-called threat involving Enid High School was not related to the others. A student admitted to making that 911 call. It doesn't change Oklahoma's course of action.
Law enforcement will continue to respond as if they're real.
The FBI's investigation is ongoing, but we'll continue to bring you information as this story unfolds. In Oklahoma City, Ashley Moss, Oklahoma's News 4.
I really hate these swatting incidents, and it just makes me very sick. Here's some more. Because there are ways to end this. And like I said before, if you do not find a way, no one will. We need to make sure that this does not happen again. We need to monitor what our kids post on social media. We need to follow our children on social media. We need to take the computer out of the living room, out of the bedroom, and then put it in the living room. And this happened yesterday. Take a look at this.
Suspects are facing charges in connection with a threat of violence at Towson High School. Both suspects are juveniles. One was located locally, the other in North Carolina. Baltimore County Interim Police Chief Dennis Delp gave an update on the investigation.
And it is also learned through the investigation that these two individual juveniles tried to implicate a third juvenile, to be involved in the threat of violence. It was determined that that third individual was not involved in that threat of violence investigation and was not involved in it at all.
He says there was no actual danger to staff or students and adds that several threats over the past few weeks are related to this investigation.
Now parents have had enough and want to meet with the officials. because I've had it up to
Being
here.
kept in the dark about recent school threats.
And Baltimore County Police are...
Take a look.
Well, Towson High School parents are calling for a sit-down with school and law enforcement leaders to avoid being kept in the dark about recent school threats.
And Baltimore County Police are placing more officers at the school this week just to be safe.
Alexis Davila is live at Towson and near Towson High School. This comes after the school received an email last week about explosives being placed inside the building. Police never found anything to support this threat, but added extra patrol the next day for precaution. A week before Thanksgiving, the school also received an online threat that originated from outside the U.S. At that time,
Parents are demanding, saying, well, this better not happen again.
Reporting live, I'm Alexis Davila for WJZ.
All right. Here's the final one, and then we're going to take a break.
Also new tonight, a pair of York County schools were placed on lockdown after receiving threats today. Penn Township police were called to Park Hills School for a threatening call around 2 o'clock this afternoon. About an hour later, Southwestern High School also received a threat, which police believe was from the same caller. Nothing suspicious was found at either school.
Nothing suspicious. That wastes the officers' time. That's why we need laws to protect us and make parents pay. That's exactly what we need. And many people are like, we can't do this and that. Well, get a grip. Well, if you don't want this to happen, get a grip. Monitor your kids. Take the computer out of the kids' room. Put it in the living room. Put it in the kitchen. Put it wherever in the family area. So this does not happen again. Install software if you need to. Monitor the internet if you need to. Do whatever it takes to make sure that it does not happen again. There you go. That's the solution. Coming up next, the conclusion to Forbidden Love. We've shown you the evidence that was being put in place when the attackers attacked Mitsu, when Jassy was murdered. But are the parents ready to fess up what happened? Stay with us. Saturday, I brought you the story about a murder that happened continents away. It was about the murder of Jassy. Her friends nicknamed her for a reason. We reported and we looked at how her life has been as a beautiful young girl until she met Mitsu. Now, what the police have said was the uncle was involved, but the parents say they didn't do anything. But according to all the evidence from the sword and the pistol, based on those evidence based on the evidence that I've showed you on Saturday, are the parents ready to confess and what would happen? And why weren't the police there to talk to them? Here's Bobby Kuhn's conclusion of the story.
For the rifle or the pistol or the sword, could you establish ownership?
From the day her body was identified, Indian authorities have known that Jassy's murder would be a closely scrutinized case, both in India and Canada. And they say they're confident the evidence they've assembled is airtight. The murder weapons, the getaway car, Jassy's sworn statement, and especially the confessions that implicate her uncle and mother.
To my mind, this is a whole lot of evidence that no police or no authority anywhere in the world can really deny or dismiss as false or questionable.
But that's exactly what Canadian authorities are doing, questioning those confessions because of how Indian police may have extracted them. RCMP spokesman Grant Learned.
There would have to be a complete outline of how such confessions were obtained, under what conditions, etc. They may not meet the test of Canadian jurisprudence.
In fact, it's no secret that Indian police interrogations often include the use of physical force to get information. Authorities in Canada are concerned that evidence gathered under those circumstances might not be admissible in a Canadian court.
What the police in Canada have said to us is that they can't be sure about the evidence because they don't know how it was collected and they don't know how the interrogations were conducted. How do you respond to that?
I find that a bit curious because the kind of evidence that we have is irrefutable
There is one key piece of evidence that lead detective Singh says is virtually impossible to dismiss.
We recovered 2 mobile phones from the accused kidnappers and got the call records of these mobile phones. We were then able to establish all the pattern of calls to the residential telephones of Jesse's family, calls made from these telephones to Canada.
These are records of the calls made on the kidnappers' cellular phones. Among them, calls placed on the same date and at the approximate time that Jassy was murdered. And among those was this one, made to the accused killers from a phone that Indian police have confirmed is located at Jassy's home in Canada.
The record showing that phone call between the family home and the cell phone belonging to the people who have confessed to that murder on the night of the murder. What does common sense tell you about that? Is there any other explanation?
There could be a variety of explanations, but again...
Offer one.
But those
completely hypothetical. Give me a possible explanation other than the call had to do with the murder.
Again, you're asking me to make a statement on a case that's before the courts in another country. It'd be absolutely irresponsible of me to do so.
It seems that despite that cell phone evidence suggesting a conspiracy in Canada to commit murder, the call for justice is going unanswered. In British Columbia, the administration of criminal justice is the job of the Attorney General.
Mr. Plant? I'm Bob McEwen from NBC News.
Twice he had declined our request to sit down for an interview, so we came to the Parliament building in Victoria to find him.
We'd like to ask you a few questions. Thanks.
Jeff Platt is the Attorney General. We caught up with him in a hallway after a cabinet meeting.
If, in this case, there is, as the Indian police insist, irrefutable evidence that a crime was committed here in Canada, does that not concern you if no one's being pursued for that as the man responsible for justice in the province?
Whether it's happening or not happening, it has to happen slightly below the public radar screen in order to make sure that in the long run we can in fact investigate and detect and prevent criminal activities.
If there is an investigation going on below the radar, as you put it, it's
way
subterranean. From what we can gather, speaking to the authorities in India, they have not been asked to share what they call irrefutable evidence of a crime, what would be a crime in Canada, if they're right, with the RCMP here, the police here. We've spoken to friends of the young woman who died, to whom she told about the threats on her life from her family.
Here in British Columbia.
Here in British Columbia.
There are people in British Columbia here who believe that an offense has been committed. I assume they have reported it to the police.
This has been widely reported in the media, Mr. Plant. This is no secret. This was front page news 2 years ago.
Oh, and I'm not disputing that, but I'm just saying that this is what you would do. You would go report that to the police. You don't sit at home waiting for the police to call you.
Which is exactly why Jassy's closest friends contacted the police 2 years ago to report what they knew. Unfortunately, they say, the RCMP wasn't very interested.
They didn't care. Like, I'm thinking they're going to question me and, you know, maybe sit down with me and find out my details. Nothing. Not even I was in and out of there in 2 minutes.
With so few questions being asked or answered in Canada, we decided to put some of our own to the only 2 people who can lay these accusations to rest.
Mrs. Sidhu, I'm Bob McEwen from NBC News.
The family had declined our request for an interview. So first, we approached Jassy's mother as she arrived for work.
I'd very much like to talk to you about the murder of your daughter. As you know, the Indian authorities believe that you conspired to have your daughter killed. Would you respond to that for us? Mr. Badesh, I'm Bob McEwen from Dateline NBC. Could we ask you some questions about Jassy's murder?
We then tried to speak with Jassy's uncle, Surjit Badesha.
The Indian government has told us they have irrefutable proof that you planned and paid for the murder of Jassy. How do you answer that? The most troublesome thing is the cell phone call, the call between your home in Canada and the cell phone in the hands of the people now on trial for murder. How on earth do you explain that?
Jassy's uncle is on the record as denying any involvement in her death, but he wouldn't even tell us that.
Is there anything you can say to us?
The vast majority of the Sikh community condemns honor killings and wants justice to be done, which has led some in Canada to wonder if Jassy's heritage had been Irish or French instead of Indian. Would police here have been pursuing this case more aggressively?
if the circumstances are as we've seen in India, can you think of any legitimate reason that 2 years after the fact, the police here would not have done more than they've done?
Well, the problem in answering that question is that the word if is a small part of your sentence, but a huge part of your question. But what I can say is that, generally speaking, if those were the facts, I would expect that the law enforcement agencies in Canada would be responding to those facts.
But so far, there's no reason to believe they are. Nor will Canadian authorities tell us when, if ever, the Indian government might expect the extradition of Jassie's uncle or mother. For some reason, the murder of Jassy Sidhu is a case for which no one seems to want to take responsibility. The provincial government in British Columbia told us to take our questions to the federal government. The federal government said, ask the province. The provincial attorney general insists he can't order the authorities to investigate anyone, and says that if the public has questions about how the police are doing their job, they should file a complaint. None of which has come as any consolation to those who cared about Jassy most.
You can't use Canada as a hiding ground to hire people to kill people in other countries and get away with it. You can't do this. They have to take action. They can't let this happen.
So when you talk about this now and think about all you know about Jassy and what her dreams were and what you believe happened, is there a moral to this story?
Well, you know, I think even that Jassy was murdered, I think it's still important to be true to yourself. And even though the outcome was what it was, I think that no one has the right to live your life for you. It's your choice.
It made us feel comforted that at least for this little bit of time that she had with him, she was doing what she wanted. She was living her life how she wanted. She was free. She was in love, and she was just doing it for her and for him and not for anyone else.
A world away, all that Me Too now has to remind him of Jassy are a few photographs of the good times and the physical and emotional scars of the bad. With the trial of his wife's alleged killers pending and Jassy's uncle Surjit still free, he says he continues to fear for his own life, moving from place to place, often sleeping on rooftops, never far from well-armed friends. All Mitu wants, he says, is justice for Jassy, the woman who risked everything just to be with him, who challenged centuries of culture and tradition for that one chance at true love.
I want to live till the day the justice is done. I want to live till the day these people who killed Jassy hang for their crime.
Is there any way to comprehend how someone's sense of family honor could lead them to kill someone as beautiful as your wife?
Whatever they did was completely wrong. It can never be justified. I hadn't committed any crime. I had only loved her.
When we come back, an update about this case, and I'll give you my take. But first, here's an update from Stone Phillips.
Police in British Columbia say they've begun reviewing evidence to determine if there are grounds to launch a formal criminal investigation. Authorities in India say they've asked for the extradition of Jassy's uncle and mother to face murder charges. So far, there is still no response from the Canadians.
We're talking about the murder of Jassy. This was on Dateline back in 2002. And a year after I posted this, To the Lighthouse updated this. So I'm going to read you the update. So depressing, I looked this case up online. The uncle and mother successfully fought extradition for almost 20 years. Finally, in 2019, Canada extracted them to India to face charges. Mid-2021, the case actually began. I believe the pair are now in their 70s now, and have lived the latter half of their lives as free birds despite the experiencing the murder of 25-year-old Jassy in 2000. Justice delayed is just denied. I'm Canadian. Our government and police have failed Jassy at every turn. Failed her in life, failed her in death. May she rest in peace. And, wow. I was thanked by To the Lighthouse for posting this, and then To the Lighthouse, if you're watching, you're welcome. I'm glad. It's my pleasure. I mean, as someone who's dedicated news magazines, I'm very obligated to go back to where news magazines were just news magazines, where we can learn how to protect ourselves from frauds, scams, health, learn about celebrities, etc. And that's what the show's all about, helping you out. Coming up, still ahead. Imagine that you were suffering through a disease. Doctors say they may be able to help, but the cure they propose is just the work of a mad scientist. You're going to meet a girl who had one of her surgery, which was half of her brain removed. Stay with us. Imagine as a child that you've been diagnosed with a mysterious illness. Doctors tell you they may be able to help, but the cure they propose is more mysterious than ever. In fact, it may seem like a work of a mad scientist than medical science. Years ago, I stumbled across a video about something called the hemispherectomy. What is it, and how does it work? Here's Robert Brazell.
Everything you do, say, see, think, everything you are, all shaped by the most complex living structure in nature, the 100 billion nerve cells of the human brain, an instrument of astonishing power, except when it doesn't work.
Are you having a seizure right now, Kaci?
Yes.
This is typically what happens?
Yeah.
Kaci Cave's brain is out of control. For the past 4 years, it's been under siege, battered by an electrical storm within. Wave after wave of epileptic seizures, often hundreds each day, have nearly destroyed the 13-year-old's ability to use her right arm and leg, to speak, and even her ability to think.
You like some water, Kaci? Is that what you want?
What?
You want a drink of water? Is that what you're wanting?
No, thank you.
Oh, okay.
This is the story of the courage of one young girl and the faith of her family. It's also about the frontiers of medicine, attempting to understand the human brain, and the heroic efforts to save a single life. Kaci Cave from Tulsa, Oklahoma, had been a bright and healthy child, and the pride of her mother, Regina.
This is a child that made straight A's and she didn't have to do anything, and now she just struggles to do the simplest task.
The first sign of trouble began on a hot day in the summer of 1992.
My first seizure, major seizure, about the 4th grade.
When we first met Kaci in early November of last year, she had a clear memory of that day 4 years ago, when her life changed forever. But her epilepsy had damaged her ability to talk about it.
It was a hot day.
She was walking around the room with her head jerked and she was snatching things from the air. And her whole right side had kind of tightened up and her face was kind of drooping. We ran her to the hospital.
It was epilepsy, but not the more common kind that can be controlled with medication. She had a rare and devastating condition called Rasmussen syndrome.
It starts in one place and gradually, like a Pac-Man, eats more and more away.
Dr. John Freeman of the Johns Hopkins Children's Center is the expert Kaci's parents turned to.
The only thing that can happen is that it will get worse if it's on the left side of the brain, as with Kaci's case. They will lose language and they will lose intellect. And the longer you wait, the less likely you are to get recovery.
Dr. Freeman offered Kaci's parents a remedy, but it will shock you, just as it shocked Kaci's parents.
The only way of treating it is to take out that bad half of the brain. Isn't that a very primitive kind of medical treatment? Terrible kind of medical treatment. It makes no sense to cut out half of the brain, but it's the only thing that works.
The operation, called a hemispherectomy, is brutally simple to understand. Surgeons remove the entire left half of Kaci's brain, the half of the brain that is the source of the seizure. The empty space would fill with spinal fluid. And while a human being can survive such drastic measures, they face extraordinary risks. Kaci's parents looked at their precious 10-year-old and could not imagine her with half a brain. For them, it was an impossible choice.
Johns Hopkins had called us and told us that, this is what your daughter faces. And I was very rude. I said, no way. We'll fight it. We'll beat it. I won't do this.
To really think that you might have to take out part of someone's brain, my reality says you can't do that. You can't live through something like that.
Hi, Kaci.
So for 3 years, Kaci's parents tried everything else. Minor operations, special diets, blood transfusions, and powerful drugs.
Have you taken your pill yet?
Yes, I just taken my pill.
Kaci's decline continued. Still, knowing the terrible risks involved, her parents couldn't bring themselves to go ahead with the surgery.
A parent has to say that my child's future is so bleak that I agree that you can take out half of her brain.
Yes, they have to say exactly that. And they have to say, in addition, that my child's future is so bleak that death would be preferable if, God forbid, it should come.
Kaci's parents finally agreed in the spring of '96. The epilepsy had continued to destroy Kaci's brain. She was wheelchair-bound. She couldn't keep up in school. Her mind was failing. For Kaci, there had never been any doubt. She had always wanted the surgery to rid herself of the horrible seizures. Her parents had finally caught up to their daughter's resolve.
It got so bad, and she was doing so poorly. It wasn't fair to her. When she would have to go into a wheelchair, she was devastated. She wanted to be on her own. She didn't like being dependent on someone pushing her around and helping her up and down and around when she would fall. No, this is Kaci wanted a life, and Kaci deserved a life.
But what kind of life would it be? What doctors hoped for was an amazing transformation in Kaci's brain. They hoped that when the diseased left half was removed, the right side of Kaci's brain would reinvent itself, taking over the thoughts, memories, and language that had been on the left. But this operation had worked best in very small children. The doctors did not know if it would work in someone as old as Kaci. So Kaci and her family prepared for the worst, calling on their deep religious faith. Since the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, the surgery could leave Kaci paralyzed on the right side. So in the weeks leading up to the operation, she practiced how to live left-handed.
She eats with it, brushes her teeth. Been trying to practice getting those shoes on with one hand, but boy, that's hard.
That's hard.
And because the left side of Kaci's brain controlled language, the surgery could leave Kaci unable to speak. So she practiced sign language.
Thank you, you're welcome. Yes, no, eat, drink.
We're hoping that's going to be helpful if we have some language problems after surgery.
No.
No.
It was November 8th of last year. The surgery was scheduled in just 4 days. All day long, friends visited to say goodbye. In a few hours, the family would leave Tulsa for Baltimore. For the doctors at Johns Hopkins, it is no routine event. Kaci could die during the surgery, or she could survive without thoughts or speech.
It's awful. It's awesome. It's frightening. And any time we go into this, we go in with fear and trepidation. But the family has to be on our side.
Wes Caves was not sure he was on the doctor's side. In a cruel twist, just weeks before the scheduled surgery, Kaci was able to get up out of her wheelchair, which gave her father one last chance to question whether they should go ahead with the radical surgery after all.
Does it make you wonder if you want to go have the surgery?
Yes, I'm going to go on that surgery.
But now that you can walk, so you still think this is what we ought to do, though?
Yes.
Neurosurgeon Ben Carson is one of the pioneers of the procedure he will perform on Kaci.
Does it give you pause to take out half of a child's brain?
Absolutely. It gives me pause every time I even look at the human brain, because, you look at this mass of amorphous looking stuff and you realize that this is what makes a person who they are.
This is a good day.
This is it. Everyone knows we're heading out of here and we're trying to start this trip.
Hesitation and prayer. Hesitation and prayer. The moment for the surgery had arrived. In a 12-hour operation, the doctors removed the diseased half of Kaci's brain. Where there were billions of brain cells, there was now only empty space, the white area in this brain scan. Kaci survived. Her seizures were gone. But it would be weeks before anyone found out just what price she had paid.
When we return, did Kaci pay the price? Was it worth it? And what will her parents think after the left side of the brain has been removed? Robert Brazil with the conclusion to Kaci's celebration. Stay with us. So, Kaci Caves has just agreed to do the hemispherectomy. Now remember, the hemispherectomy is where the child's left side of the brain is removed when it's seizured. But the question remains, did Kaci pay the price? Was it worth it? And what would the parents think when the left side of the brain was removed? It's a very different case you're about to see as she starts off on the road to recovery. Remember, she was 13 at the time. Will it happen? And what will Kaci think? Once again, here's Robert Brazil.
It is 10 days since surgeons removed the left half of Kaci Cave's brain. Her head is temporarily swollen. The change in her appearance is painful to see. She is in rehabilitation in Baltimore.
Good job. You feel me? You feel it more?
Her right hand is now paralyzed. Her right leg is weak, almost useless. And there's something else. Before the surgery, Kaci had been a bubbly and optimistic teenager.
All right, you go ahead first.
Now she seems disinterested.
I don't care. You don't care?
Even angry.
Push into my hand over here. Yes, you can. Okay.
And though she could say simple phrases, adding to her agony is a profound loss of language.
Can you imagine the frustration of being unable to express yourself? She knows what's going on. She understands and she can hear. But she can't initially even reliably say yes and no.
As a parent, no one wants to admit their child has that deficit when they were a very verbal child. I wasn't really prepared for the frustration.
The terrifying epilepsy is gone. In its place, a swirl of confusion.
I need to look in here for a small square.
The right side of Kaci's brain is all she had left. But remember, the doctors had told Kaci's parents that the right side would get stronger, rewiring itself to take over the functions of the left half. But 10 days after the surgery, there's no sign it's happening.
Can you drink out of it?
Regina, who spends each day at Kaci's side, struggles to maintain her optimism, but fights to stay strong for her daughter.
Are you going to break the speech? Yes. Are you ready, Beth? Yes.
It's a week before Christmas, just a month since the surgery. Kaci and her family are back home in Tulsa.
Let's see this first. Okay.
She continues with her grueling day-by-day therapy. Gone are the cane and wheelchair she needed just 3 weeks ago. Her right side is remarkably stronger. Repeated practicing with the leg helps Kaci's brain to find new pathways to control it.
Okay, forward and back.
And while Kaci's upbeat mood has returned, she is still fighting a heartbreaking battle to learn to speak again.
Colors. Hello.
The sky is...
Yes?
Yeah. Remember I had jeans on the other day? What color were my jeans?
How can the right half of Kaci's brain possibly take over and allow her to speak again? New research is showing that in all our brains, nothing is concentrated in one place. Memories, thoughts, and words are scattered throughout. The hope is that Kaci's remaining brain will form new connections that will allow her first to find words and then to speak in sentences.
It's like a field of hay. It's grown up. There are no pathways. The words are hidden as treasures here, there, and everywhere. They've got to search around to find the right word.
He has a hard shell on his back. And that goes in when he gets scared.
When they find the right word, they've bent the grass a little bit. When they find that word enough times, they've beaten the path to that word, and it comes back.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Remember the jeans? Casey, you'll put on your...
Okay. Jeans.
Not green jeans.
Green jeans.
If you took out the left side of my brain, I wouldn't think again, would I?
Probably not. And the reason is that your right side of your brain, the ability to find language, has been buried too long. If we did that for you at 10, I can assure you that you will talk again.
I don't know.
But Kaci is not 10. She's 14 now. The question remains, is she too old to reclaim her speech? Her father, Wes, is still wondering if they did the right thing.
You sit here and you look at this and it's not like you have the choice of going back.
It's April, 5 months since the surgery. Kaci's body has become markedly stronger. Her right hand remains weak, but with just one arm, she swims laps easily. With a brace on her ankle, she can walk even better than she could before the surgery. And most important, the disability her parents feared most is getting better. Kaci is beginning to speak again.
What's our season? Spring. What color is it? Blue. And red. That's right.
New connections in Kaci's brain are emerging, allowing her to express her thoughts. Regina and Wes, for the first time in 4 years, are beginning to see a future for Kaci. Their anguish about their decision, first to delay and then to have the surgery, has eased. Now, as they watch Kaci get stronger and stronger, they stand in awe of her courage.
I've had her in therapy, thinking that somehow this kid's got a break. I have. I've gotten angry, I've cried, I've shed tears, and so I take her, and the therapists come out and say, Regina, this is the most well-adjusted child, you know. Then they kind of hint like, maybe you'd like to be in therapy, but actually, she does great.
Chat. So the question is, how's Kaci doing? We'll find out. Robert Brazil's going to tell us more. Stay with us. We're almost at the end of the story. How's Kaci doing after that surgery? And how is her right leg doing? Barbara Brazil now concludes Kaci's celebration.
7 months after Kaci's surgery, there's a reunion near Johns Hopkins. Dozens of children who've had the surgery over the past 10 years gather with their parents.
Can you give me 35 cents?
It's Dr. Freeman's first chance since the surgery to examine Kaci and to talk with Regina.
Has Kaci forgotten anything?
She remembers everything. She can remember things when she was little bitty, and we'll go someplace and she remembers it.
We've affected her performance, which is coming back.
Right. Slowly, but it's coming back.
This isn't slowly. Okay, slowly is in the eye of the beholder.
In fact, just a month later, Kaci returns to school for the first time in 2 years. She's a freshman at Jenks High School. While Kaci will always have some language impairment, no one can say how far she will ultimately improve. She has every expectation of a normal, healthy life.
Is it getting any easier for you now when you try to talk?
Yeah.
But it's still tough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you think of the word in your mind?
Yeah, but I can't get out.
You know the word, but you can't get it out.
That's right.
And does it get really frustrating?
Oh, yeah.
And what is the most pressing thing on the mind of this 14-year-old?
How much do you want to drive a car, Kaci?
Like, real bad.
Your dad said you practice on the golf cart now?
Yeah. I feel pretty good, you know?
You're a pretty good driver?
Yeah.
Do people have to get out of your way?
No, come on.
Signs scientists do not understand exactly how her brain accomplished so much.
Most people in neuroscience realize that we don't know anything compared to what we will know 20 years from now. And 20 years from now, we don't know anything compared to what we'll know 100 years from now.
After years of caring for her very sick daughter, Regina now faces a dramatic and very welcome change.
She needed me to help her get up. She needed me to help her walk in and out of the bathtub. She doesn't need that now. And I am thrilled that there was a part of me that maybe I needed to be needed. It says round to the nearest pin.
Of course, Regina still helps Kaci with her homework.
Together, we sit at that table every afternoon, and we'll do this work, and we'll do whatever it takes. Yay! It's awesome. Just awesome, girl.
Do you ever feel like the Lord is testing you?
I feel like the Lord has blessed us. I know she was a perfect child. Maybe I wasn't the perfect mother to have this happen to, but I'd like to think that I've done well through all of it. And I give God praise because he brought her through it. She's alive, and I'm thankful.
Thankful, even for a simple sentence.
We had a really bad rainstorm Monday. And she talked today. She said, "Oh, Dad, I got drenched today." And I'm going, "She got drenched today. Listen to her." I was just amazed.
Oh, golly.
She's ready to take on the challenges, and if there were anyone capable of rising to that challenge, I think she's the one. Her faith stabilized us, and that's the reason that I tell her frequently she's my hero.
She is a hero, isn't she?
She's everyone's hero.
And she is a hero. I don't think we'll have time to update on Kaci about her progress, but we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that tomorrow morning because I'm very excited to share this story. The reason I'm sharing this story is to help you learn about this hemispherectomy and how it's done. So, coming tomorrow morning, we're gonna continue updating you on Kaci. Also, you're gonna meet another one. You're also gonna meet another person who had the similar case as Kaci. Her name is Brandy. Brandy's Miracle. We're going to walk you through her process like the same ones that Kaci did. Now you might be asking, why am I sharing in this? Because it's a need-to-know basis so that next time, if you're going through this hemispherectomy, you need to know what happens. And as parents, it's up to you to make that choice. So ain't nothing to say GMB about. It's a decision as a family, as parents, that you got to make for your child. If your child wants to learn how to talk and speak. Because when it's removed, the language is on the right side. And that's the ability to walk, to speak and all. That's coming up tomorrow. Probably also, if it happens, we're going to talk about John Mark Stallings, a coach. I just love this story. We'll probably have that for you coming tomorrow morning or probably on Wednesday. That's Give Me a Break for this Monday. We'll see you again tomorrow morning for Give Me a Break Tuesday. I hope you had a great day. For all of us here at YouTube and Give Me a Break, have a good night.